Hi, everybody. Today's Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, and our dear friend, Pepe Escobar, is here with us. Welcome back, Pepe.
Oh, but I have to be with you, Nima. So this is Southeast Asian grace and how polite they am. I am in a Buddhist country. You can see in the back my Buddhist monks in the back. They are all saluting Nima. Sending auspicious and good vibrations to you and to our audience.
Obrigado. Pepe, let's start with Donald Trump's visit to Asia. He went to Japan, Korea, South Korea, and when it
He
comes
was
to the
he
policy of
was
the United States,
we started here with my neighbors in Malaysia.
yeah, exactly.
Uh,
So,
we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna
yeah,
talk about this also.
for sure.
Go ahead, Nima, please.
Yeah, here is what Pete Hegseth said about China because they're trying to show how powerful they are in Asia with these sort of visits that Donald Trump is, because after that he's gonna visit, you know, he's gonna talk with Xi. He wants to be in a better position in that, in his to talk with Xi. But here is what Pete Hegseth said about China.
And I discussed today the security situation around Japan and in the region remains, as he said, and we agree, severe. The threats we face are real and they are urgent. China's unprecedented military buildup and its aggressive military actions speak for themselves. That's why President Trump's peace through strength agenda is so important.
What sort of threat is coming from China to Japan?
Exactly. This is exactly what I was thinking. Oh my God! But this absolute imbecile. What the hell does he know about China? Less than zero. For instance, did he know what happened at the ASEAN summit early this week in my neighbors, Malaysia, south of Thailand? I cover it from here. My column is coming out today, so while we're speaking, Nima, probably later today, but because it's coming out in Russia, probably tonight Russia time. I wrote detailed but not too long column about the ASEAN summit, which was a series of summits. It's the ASEAN summit. The 11 members of ASEAN. Now we have Timor-Leste as the new member of ASEAN. That's wonderful. But there are the parallel summits, which are immensely important. ASEAN, China, ASEAN plus 3, which is China, Japan, and South Korea. And of course, ASEAN with other partners, including Russia as well. And there were, of course, very important foreign guests for the summer, including President Lula. And Lula was invited personally by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim from Malaysia during the BRICS in Rio. In fact, we were in the room at the BRICS Business Council just probably a few minutes after Anwar had invited Lula personally to come to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur for the summit, and before their own speeches to the BRICS Business Council. That was in early July, right? So two things immensely important happened. Okay, but the two most important things that happened in Kuala Lumpur early this week, they were not Trump visiting the ASEAN summit. Definitely not. And posing as the peacemaker between Thailand and Cambodia, because the real peacemaker was Anwar Ibrahim. It was Malaysia that brokered the ceasefire and then organized a so-called peace deal, which we don't know if it's going to last or not, between Thailand and Cambodia. But Trump, obviously, he said, I did it. No, he did not. But of course, because everybody here is very polite and well educated, they let Trump go on with his Narcissus act, okay? Because he would be there only for a day and a half, and then he would leave to South Korea. That's exactly what happened. The most important thing happened afterwards, Nima. There were very important speeches by China, of course. There was a meeting of the comprehensive strategic partners, regional comprehensive strategic partnership, RCEP, which is the mega trade bloc of everybody in East Asia. And of course, the China ASEAN meeting, the meeting only themselves in the room. So what did they do? They upgraded their free trade agreement. So from now on, China and the 11 of the ASEAN, they have an upgraded trade agreement, which means they are facing the tariff tsunami as a bloc, including China. This is immensely important. You won't see one comma about this in Western mainstream media, Nima, and your audience. This is extremely important. That's one thing. And so we had the RCEP meeting expanding, and we had the ASEAN plus China meeting, and even they discussed it in the ASEAN plus 3 with Japan and South Korea, more interconnection. So Trump going to Japan and to South Korea after ASEAN, it doesn't matter. Obviously, it's part of what this ridiculous Secretary of Forever Wars thinks to counter Chinese provocations. But of course, the South Koreans and the Japanese, they have to be very pragmatic and see that they don't have anything in their arsenal to counteract Chinese geoeconomic power all across Asia. And they're not going to do anything stupid that will go against their own ASEAN partners as well, the 11 at ASEAN. So all that is to show you, Nima, and our audience, how East Asia and Southeast Asia, they are closely interconnected. And they have to deal with the bully. So, and they deal with the South Asian way. Politeness, graciousness, lots of smiles and all that. But they will continue to do their business the way they were doing it before. For instance, this is something that I write in my column. The case of Vietnam, which is very, very interesting. A lot of companies delocalized to Vietnam, including Chinese companies. So what is happening for the past few months and will continue to happen? The most important factor for Vietnam's economic boom again is China. Is China sending stuff to Vietnam that is processed and then goes to the American market or the European market? So Vietnam badly needs Chinese products. Without that, their economy will tumble as well. So forget about these discussions in the West. People don't know how it works here in Southeast Asia, how interconnected everything is. And of course, another important theme that was discussed very discreetly in Kuala Lumpur is how to face the tariff tsunami, which, as we all know, very, very heavy on China, very heavy on 3 of the ASEAN members, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar, but less heavy in others, like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, for instance. They are, I think, around 19%, less than 20% tariffs. The others are 40-something. And China, we don't even know what it is anymore. It's over 100%, right? So they are coordinated inside ASEAN and in this, and early this week in Kuala Lumpur in this forum, how they're going to not reorganize the supply chain, no, but how they can become less dependent on the American market. Okay, so let's say this is the introduction, Nima, to our conversation. This is the introduction that leads to Trump meeting Xi tomorrow in South Korea. Very, very important. I'll try to be very brief, and then you can ask me zillions of questions, no problem. But let's say I'll like to frame our discussion in what Trump wants. Basically everything. He wants the end of the restrictions on rare earth minerals. Not going to happen. China might think about, well, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 rare earths and alleviate the tariffs on these ones, or the necessity to obtain a license to buy these rare earths products with these rare earths. He wants China to buy more soybeans from American farmers, which are Trump's voting base, especially in the Midwest. The Chinese may say, okay, maybe, but not too much. We're already buying from Brazil. Brazil has everything we need. We don't need your soybeans, but we can make a few concessions. And the third one, which is very, very important, is the crucial. Trump is going to force China to buy less Russian oil and gas as well, and buy overpriced American energy. This is a no-go. Not gonna happen, because this is Russia-China strategic partnership, and this is one of the key planks of BRICS as well, and between Moscow and Beijing. So what are we gonna have? We're gonna have, maybe, if he is polite, a few concessions from the Chinese, but they come with conditionalities. You have to revise this tariff tsunami that we Chinese know it's basically against us. It's against everybody in Asia, but mostly against us. And if you do that, then we can make some concessions on our side. So this is the key of the discussion tomorrow, Nima. As you can see, it's going to be very, very tough.
Pepe, they're trying to pretend that Japan, with this new deal, rare earth deal that they're talking about, the new, because Donald Trump has signed an agreement with Japan about the rare earth, but I don't see Japan being capable of providing the United States the way that the United States.
They don't even have the refining process in place for their rare earth. This will take years. There's different projections. In the case of Australia, with Australia, they made a deal with the US as well. In the case of Japan, in the case of anybody else, if they sign something with Argentina, for instance, to reorganize the supply chain will take years, minimum. If there is a lot of investment and a lot of work, 5 years. More realistically, 10 years. Between 5 and 10 years, the Chinese are going to be way beyond in terms of the tech race using rare earth minerals. So this is the word comes for me in Portuguese, Nima, paliativo. I'm sure many of you will understand. It's but it's a stopgap sort of measure, but it's not consequential, not consequential at all. But the empire is desperate. No?
Yeah.
They accused the coup by the Chinese, which was in fact practically unexpected. The way it was swift like that. They know that they don't have replacement in line starting from now, so they cannot reorganize their supply chain. It's going to take years, a lot of deals, a lot of work, and a lot of money. And the empire, at the moment, they don't have time. They are on a, I would say, an even more complex and dangerous trajectory, which brings a metaphor that many of us have used in the past of playing chess with a pigeon. And now, this gigantic imperial pigeon, they are kicking the chessboard, literally, and everywhere. Latin America, Europe, Asia. So it's extremely, extremely dangerous. The whole thing, the regime change operation in Venezuela is a goal.
Yeah.
That's everybody knows that's what it is. They cannot invade Venezuela. They're going to try to provoke a color revolution and a regime change with everything they have.
It's going to be mostly CIA operation together
Yes,
with
it is. It's going to
sort
be
of
covert.
mercenaries.
You're right, Nima. It's going to be, it already is covert, including suitcases full of cash, like we used to see in Afghanistan or in Iraq, for instance. And of course, mobilizing their cells with the comprador elites in Venezuela. They're not going only after Venezuela, they're going after Colombia as well. And very, very important, as part of the hybrid war against the BRICS, which is now reaching a whole new level, guess which is the number one target? Brazil. And people in Brazil have to be very, very, very alert to it. It doesn't matter the mini Lula Trump meeting, which didn't they couldn't discuss anything in practice with only a few minutes. This is a diversionist tactic. They want to break BRICS from the inside, and the focus is Brazil. There's absolutely no question about that. Why? Because they cannot do essentially anything against the two big brothers, Russia and China. Whatever this stupid Secretary of Forever Wars says, and he doesn't know anything about foreign policy anywhere, there is an understanding even among, I would say, some, to quote our friend Martianov, some people who have an IQ over room temperature in the Beltway, inside the industrial military complex, that is absolutely impossible to win the war in the battlefields of Ukraine. This war is lost. It's a matter of managing the strategic defeat. And this, for Trump, is something that, for them is like a spaceship in the Milky Way somewhere. He cannot process this information, that he is in charge of managing this strategic defeat. And at the same time, which of course think tanks in the US are using diversionist tactics about it. The tech and trade and tariff war against China, you cannot win that. You are starting to lose it as well. So that brings us to the latest Rand Corporation paper, which a very, very important thing. This is not an official Rand Corporation paper. Rand Corporation is based in Santa Monica in California. When I lived in California, I used to go there sometimes, if they received me, of course, a long time ago. But this was during the Bush 1 era. So they talked to foreign journalists at the time. And of course, they are one of the official think tanks of the industrial military complex, and of course of NATO as well. So their latest report is a commentary. It's not an official paper. They are selling it as a Rand paper. Basically, it's as if they were admitting that it's impossible to contain China, so we have to live with it. That's very, very misleading. let me try to find here some of my notes, Nima. Look, in terms of this tech Cold War between China and the United States, they call for limited cooperation, their own language, own artificial intelligence or clean energy. But look, they say, okay, maybe we can cooperate with China in some aspects, but they say we should keep our export controls. This is what is even the Chinese in China. This is a very common expression. The terminology now is adopted by many scholars in China. Small yard, high fence. Small yard, high fence is the Americans. They retreat, fence the tariffs, and the Chinese understand that perfectly. They even came up with this beautiful metaphor, you know. So the restrictions should continue, but China has to adapt to American restrictions. This is what this paper is saying. Blocking China's access to semiconductors, that continues. The Chinese don't care because perhaps I would say between 2 and 3 years, but realistically, listening to the top Chinese tech experts, in 3 years, they're going to master everything they need in the semiconductor chain, and they won't need the West anymore for anything. So all that is packaged in terms of we are not trying to retard China's development, between commas. This is a language of the paper. Ridiculous. They are trying to retard, which is a stupid expression, by the way, China's development. Just they are packaging in a softer way. So this has nothing to do with détente, like we had during the USSR. They talk about Cold War détente in the commentary, but that has nothing to do with the real détente between the 1970s USSR détente. We all of us were old enough to remember there was a real détente. There were cultural exchanges. They had arms control treaties. There were a recognition of spheres of influence for the US and for the USSR. Nowadays, there's nothing. So there's no détente whatsoever in terms of China. You know the expression they use for China in this report. China has to show restraint. So it's the onus is on China. The US continues to do what they're doing. Yeah, tariffs, blocking, but the Chinese have to show restraint. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But a lot of people mistook the report as the American industrial military complex and the think tank, what our friend Ray McGovern called a MISIMAT, media, intelligence, think tanks, etc. complex are revaluing the relationship with China. No, it's still containment. What we know from these past few months, considering the Chinese reaction since the first tsunami of Trump sanctions a few months ago, and now with the rare earths directive by the Ministry of Commerce, the Chinese are not intimidated anymore. So, you want to attack war against us? Okay, bring it on. So that's the problem, the enormous problem, Nima, and all of you. They cannot win against Russia, and they cannot win against China. So what do we have? What is the beast doing? And I love the fact that Trump's limo is called the beast, which is very appropriate. So we have the beast running rampant all across the planet now and attacking. If they see an opening, say, we're going to attack here, we're going to destabilize here, color revolution here, we're going to bribe these people here. That's it. And that's why Brazil has to be immensely aware of the problems ahead.
Pepe, the problem in Russia between the United States and Russia, in my opinion, is beyond, ideological hatred toward Russia, which comes from, they want to weaken China, they want to crush down Russia. And it's all about BRICS when you see the big picture of what's going on. But focusing
Sure.
a little bit on what's going on with Russia, it seems that there is something that they haven't talked about it before as much as it deserves to be talked about, which is the kickbacks of the war in Ukraine. The, the way that they're receiving these politicians that they're receiving from, you said that everybody, Ukraine is losing. Yeah, Ukraine is losing. Germany is losing. Europe is losing, but the leaders are winning because they're getting the kickbacks. They're
Not only
receiving the money part of. Yeah, go ahead.
it's their only way out, Nima. Don't forget that there was never a plan B. So all of them, not only the EU, the mechanism of the EU in Brussels, including European Commission, NATO, this compound EU, NATO, and all the individual leaders of almost everywhere, with a very few exceptions, like, for instance, Slovakia and Hungary. They were all betting on plan A with no plan B, and we're going to crush Russia. So how they're going to justify this to their own populations and all across Europe? They can't. They can't. So they double down, which is exactly what they're doing. Can we imagine that in 2025, Germany, which is collapsing geoeconomically, is rearming itself because they want a bloody war against Russia in the next 3-4 years? Can you imagine? Only a few years ago, if you said that to anybody, I said, you're a bloody idiot. You don't know anything about politics. This is exactly what's happening in front of all of us. So this is where we are. They made their strategic bet, Nima. We're going all the way with our war. A war that they don't have weapons for this war. So this means they're going to have to plunder the money of their own taxpayers across Europe to get money for these weapons, which is already starting to happen in Germany, in France. They are already, throwing these balloons in terms of, we're going to need welfare cuts, we're going to need cuts in pensions, and all that for what? To finance their forever war. The weapons that exist, or some of them exist, most they don't, because the arsenal is depleted. They're going to buy from the industrial military complex in the US, paying in overvalued euros. Good for industrial military complex, right? So they made their bet completely, and there is not a single flicker of reason in the minds of these people in Brussels and in the main capitals, including London, outside of the EU. Shall we try a diplomatic solution with Russia? No, they are bombarding the possibility of a diplomatic solution between the US and Russia. So that's it. It's full circle. It's a full circle of dementia, in fact. And there is no sign whatsoever that this could change. If we're looking long term, perhaps in 1 or 2 generations of European political leaders, not with this crowd over there, with this lot. Forget it. So from the American point of view, this is wonderful, right, Nima? It's perfect. They subcontract completely the war against Russia. Trump can always say, I don't have anything to do with that. They reap the profits, the industrial military complex. So the industrial military complex, everybody loves it. The Pentagon loves it, you name it. And of course, they can concentrate on these mini hybrid or hot or color revolution wars all across the chessboard. Coming back to the beast as the pigeon. We can have a metaphor of the pigeon turning into a super beastly pigeon, kicking the chessboard everywhere. This is what we are. We are already into this logic, and it gets more dangerous by the day. So there are measures of possible success, or okay, let's try to put this in perspective. For instance, I think in the next few days, the 5 Central Asian stands are going to be received by Trump in Washington. This is beyond huge. This is the empire trying to break the SCO from the inside. So this proves that 2 or 3 people with IQ over room temperature in DC, they looked at the latest SCO summit in China, which was in Tianjin, which was a major success, and they said, no, we have to break this organization, just as we want to break BRICS as well. So now the offensive is against BRICS and SCO at the same time, simultaneous, right? Latin America, it's not only that gusano, imbecile that doesn't know anything about foreign policy except his own obsessions about Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. It's not only Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela. Nima, our audience, and all of you in Brazil. It's South America. And this is what Trump said yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, in his own words. He said, we're getting a pretty good handle on South America. So so this is saying the hidden part out loud. Their strategy is not only Caribbean and Venezuela, it's the whole of South America, with Brazil on top. They go all the way. Once again, they spent, in fact, they threw away out of the window $40 billion to win the midterms in Argentina. Very, very important. Of course, I'm sure many of you have seen some reports or on X, etc. The real story is straightforward and immensely dangerous in so many aspects. Robert Citrone, an American billionaire, of course, hedge fund scammer, essentially. He bought a lot of Argentine debt and equity as well. You all know that the Argentinian economy under that chainsaw mediocrity was going down, 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 down. So what happens one day? Citrone picks up the phone and calls who? His very close friend, the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. They worked together in the past, and guess what? Citrone made Bessent a very, very wealthy guy. So Bessent owns, I would say, billions of favors vis-a-vis Citrone. So what did the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States did? He organized a bailout of his friend. All of that, don't forget, fully normalized by the President of the United States. $20 billion of federal money, plus another $20 billion from private investors. But the but is the big thing, guaranteed by the federal government. So this is essentially the federal government in the United States giving $40 billion to a bloody American hedge fund investor. So this money, in fact, would end up in Argentina somehow to make their anarcho-libertarian, or whatever they want to call it, the chainsaw mediocrity, win the midterms elections. So because Trump had already said before on the record, if Milei loses the election, we stop supporting Argentina. So you see how immensely perverse the whole mechanism is. And we're talking about corruption at the highest level of the American presidency, with the American president giving the okay, the green light, the go ahead. So there are no limits, Nima and all of you. There are no limits now. We are really the beast, the big pigeon beast. Now it's kicking the chessboard everywhere, and they don't care. It's a matter of this. This is what power play is about. This is about total control, total power, not losing the power that you accumulated this past 75 years or so, and anything that you have in your arsenal, and even what you don't have, fair game. They go all the way. Can they intimidate Russia and China? No. But they can't intimidate the rest of the planet. Really. They can intimidate the whole global south. They can intimidate most of the BRICS. They can intimidate a lot of people at the SCO. And that's why it's so dangerous.
Pepe, with the case of Venezuela, I think we've seen in the news that it seems the Wagner Group is in Venezuela to help the Venezuelan government. The other news came out. It was about the Iranian drones, Pepe, that they're saying that Iranian drones, the latest versions of Iranian drones, are in Venezuela, because since we know from the official, sources with the Iranian government, they said that since 2000 they have cooperated. There is a cooperation between Iran and Venezuela since 2000. And
exactly.
It would be obvious that they have received a lot of weapons from Russia, Iran, and Russia and Iran are not. They know how to fight the United States on the ground, because of we know Hezbollah, the way that Yemenis are fighting the United States and Israel. Russia knows how to fight in Africa. They've done the same thing. A lot of experience there, and Venezuela is going to benefit from that if the news are, again, if we don't know still. These news are not verified, but it seems that Russia and Iran are not quiet when it comes to Venezuela. They're trying to do something. You're taking that.
Absolutely, no question, but very discreet. It's the same thing in terms of what the Chinese are selling to Iran. Extremely discreet. We know that Iran bought already a first batch of Chinese fighters. But on the Chinese side, this is extremely circumspect, the Chinese way, very sophisticated and discreet. We don't know exactly, for instance, all those Antonovs arriving in Tehran. We don't know what's inside. Nobody's leaking from the Russian side and from the Iranian side. Same thing with Venezuela. Wagner, you cannot hide the fact that Wagner is there. It's more or less, you can tell right away when Wagner arrives somewhere, right? So this should, I would say, this should frighten the Secretary of Forever Wars a lot, because Wagner, they know what modern war is all about, because they have been doing it in not only in Ukraine, but in the Sahel as well. So if we have the Americans try anything on the ground, they're going to get lots of bloody noses. So probably what's going to happen is bribery, suitcases full of cash, like they used what many of us saw in person in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and it worked in both cases. In the case of Afghanistan, worked the Afghan way. The Afghans would get the cash, and then they would tell us, look, we get the cash, but we continue to do what we're doing. In Iraq, it was more complicated, because those that were bribed, the generals, they actually got the cash and they left Iraq. And that's why Iraq crumbled so fast. This was at the beginning of the American invasion. But this is a standard CIA modus operandi. Suitcases full of cash and bribing the right generals. So they're going to try to provoke a color revolution or a white coup, or even trying to assassinate Maduro, which is a stupid thing to do. They tried to assassinate Fidel Castro for zillions of years. Nothing happened. And even if they did, they wouldn't change anything. It's a matter of leadership. They decapitated Hezbollah. Hezbollah is reorganizing itself. They decapitated IRGC. IRGC is reorganizing themselves. This is a typical Zionist mentality. The decapitation thing is a Zionist thing. They think that they can eliminate all their rivals in West Asia by decapitating them. And obviously, the Americans bought that. Totally stupid. But they may try something like that against Maduro. So in terms of intimidation, no question. We're going to keep having, they can send all their aircraft carriers for all we know to the Venezuelan coast. They can have F-35s flying low over Venezuelan territory. The people in Venezuela around Maduro and the Bolivarian vanguard, oh, yeah, really? Okay. Try to come here. Try to come here and fight us. It's not going to happen. So it's going to be a hybrid, indirect war and can become very, very vicious. And as long as the military around Maduro are a cohesive body and they know what's going on and they know who's behind this destabilization of Venezuela, this can hold. We don't know for how long. And of course, we also don't know the degree of support that will come from the rest of South America. Would be basically rhetorical, nothing practical. So what they have practically to enhance their defensive power comes from Iran and Russia. And, well, we already had a direct warning from Putin saying, look, if you try to destabilize Venezuela, it's not exactly a good idea. I wonder if anybody in Washington is paying attention to that. Well, certainly not the pathetic Marco Rubio. No? Can you imagine?
This guy just hates South America.
And Lavrov has to deal with him, Nima. Can you imagine? This is worse than any form of Chinese torture, superimposed over another, Well,
Rubio is just
his own obsession. Just to finish, Nima, I'm sorry. Rubio's own obsession, the only thing he thinks about is Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. There's nothing else in his life as a politician. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And obviously he's a hardcore neocon. So there you go. It's the perfect storm in terms of stupidity in one person.
It's a production of neocons and Zionists.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Pepe, it seems that the United States is not only putting pressure on China and India, but also they're talking about Turkey, Hungary, and Slovakia. They're talking about, they have to change their plan, their strategy in the next 10 years because they want them to buy the oil and gas from the United States. I don't know how would they manage that, but it seems that they're pushing that way because, the U.S. ambassador to NATO said they're trying to, convince these governments. We had Starmer going to Turkey, talking about the situation in how. I don't see any viability of that sort of plan. How do you see that? Is that going to help them?
Totally. First of all, because Turkey doesn't need ultra expensive American energy, they have the BTC pipeline, which, oh my God, it gets so stupid that I have to laugh about this. Do you know why the BTC pipeline exists? Because of the Americans. Zbigniew Brzezinski, in person, went to Baku, negotiated with Aliyev father at the time, because we need a pipeline that can also go to Turkey, bypassing Russia and China at the same time. So they built a BTC just because the Americans needed to bypass Russia and China. This was during the Clinton era. It cost almost $4 billion. Was completely absurd. The energy could come from Iran, which is a Turkey neighbor, and you didn't need to buy this ultra expensive pipeline. And they also built a gas pipeline as well. So now the Americans are forcing the Turks to buy ultra expensive American energy. This is beyond stupid. Even that ruling class in Istanbul and Ankara, which is Atlanticist and pro-American for that matter, they say, well, we don't need that. Okay, so much for this new strategy. I'm much more worried about the Central Asian stands because they're much more fragile. And I remember very, very well because this was a story that I followed in detail in the 2000s during the Cheney regime. Dick Cheney was sending one American mission to Central Asia every month, practically, trying to convince, at the time, especially Turkmenistan, which had enormous gas reserves, to have the Americans control the whole thing. And in the end, nothing happened. Kazakhstan is different because Kazakhstan, it's a consortium of energy majors, American, but also European. And Kazakhstan was always much more difficult to bend over because Nazarbayev at the time, he coined his foreign policy as multi-vector foreign policy. He saw himself as the snow leopard in foreign policy. Snow leopard, but multi-vector, looking everywhere. So he would accept, investments and from everybody, from Russia, from the Europeans, from the Americans, etc. So in the end, this Dick Cheney offensive to monopolize oil and gas in Central Asia came to nothing. They're going to start again, Nima. They're starting with this meeting between Trump and the 5 Central Asians, including Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan is a gas republic, essentially. So this is much more dangerous. And of course, once again, as we said in the beginning, this is breaking the SEO from the inside, trying to break the SEO from the inside.
I'm sure that China is aware of what's going on.
Oh, of course. China and Russia, they are very much aware of all that. Of course. And Turkey, as we know, Turkey is off SEO. Turkey is outside, and nobody trusts Turkey. Even the Chinese don't trust Turkey. If they can use Turkey for their own Belt and Road projects, fine, but they don't trust the Turks. Russia, of course, they know Turkish limits because Turkey depends on a lot of stuff from Russia, especially nuclear power, construction of their nuclear power stations, etc. So it's different. But the Central Asians, they have to be very, very careful. But of course, Russia and China will be supervising. When they come back to their capitals, there are going to be a lot of phone calls from Moscow and Beijing. Oh, okay, now tell us what really happened in Washington.
Pepe, do you feel that Europe wants to continue the conflict for the next 3 years?
Yes. We talked about this in the beginning of the show.
Yeah, but how?
It's the plan A forever war thing. It's not going to change.
How they gonna afford that? How they're gonna, is that gonna? Do they care about what's going on in Europe?
Well, I don't want to repeat myself, Nima, but okay, the short version. They have only plan A. They never had a plan B, and they won't have a plan B. They made the strategic bet to go to this war till the end with the weapons that they don't have, with the military that they don't have, with the money that they don't have, because they'll need to get a lot of loans to buy these weapons in overvalued euros. That's it.
They want.
This is the short version.
Yeah, you've mentioned that Germany wants to rebuild its military. let's assume they want to go in that direction. How capable are they to do that? They, in terms of energy, in terms of, they don't have it. They don't have it. They don't know how to produce that. What was the message of the Russian president with the announcement of the new missile? This new missile is somehow game changer. Nobody has it, and as far as we know, what
No,
is the
nobody
message
has it.
from the Russian government to the West, particularly to Europeans?
I love Lavrov's comment, but that's Lavrov, only a few words. Well, suddenly everybody went quiet. people, people, those idiots, the Atlanticist idiots, they're still trying to process the fact that the new Russian missile, it's something even more hardcore than Oreshnik. Oreshnik is one thing, very precise, limited. This is a missile that can be loitering all over the planet like forever, and then decides to attack. Choof, there you go. And it's no wonder that some of the denomination that pop up, like flying Chernobyl, things like that. Some of them are very funny, but it proves how absolutely desperate so-called Western military analysts are. And I love the deep purple subtext. Well, as an eternal rock and roller, do you know that Stormbringer is the title of a Deep Purple album? And why is that? Because a lot of people, a lot of scientists in the former Soviet Union, they were huge Deep Purple fans. And even in Russia as well. Medvedev, for instance, was always a huge Deep Purple fan. So I love the fact that the English translation of Burevestnik is Deep Purple, the title of a Deep Purple album. That's priceless. That's Russian sense of humor.
Yeah, you
So
see, Medvedev. Go ahead.
is a game changer. Yes, it is a game changer. But that's the thing, all the hypersonic and ballistic missile family in Russia, there's nothing well, I wouldn't say the West, but there's nothing in the American arsenal that can even think about going. They are 2 generations at least behind, and they won't catch up. And there will be more. Burevestnik is just the latest guy. Sooner or later, like nobody was expecting Oreshnik at the time. Nobody was expecting Burevestnik. There will be another one next year. It's inevitable. It's a same thing. It's a very long-term process. We can make two. The comparisons are, of course, they could be aleatory, but we can compare the long-term development process of China for the past 25, 30 years with programs that started in the mid-90s that even a lot of Chinese don't know about, with the military prowess of the Soviet Union all the way to Russia, with programs that started already in the 70s and in the 80s. This is what long-term does. Hard work, long-term planning, and continuing to refine your technological capabilities. In the case of China, learning geoeconomics on the go. That's why, essentially, Nima, to put it very bluntly and succinctly, the empire simply does not have the tools to go against Russia or China, not to mention both at the same time. They don't have the long-term vision. They don't have the educational infrastructure anymore. They don't have the tech infrastructure anymore. For instance, Silicon Valley basically is there is innovation, but basically is an enormous bubble, an enormous speculative bubble. there's no long-term national project, which is something that we see in China and in Russia under Putin for the past, especially for the past 10 years. We can say it started when Putin was first elected in 2000. No, it took a while. It really started by the end of the 2000s, by the mid 2010s. So that's it. Same thing with the 5-year plans in China. When you have a Made in China 2025 conceived 10 years ago, and 10 years later they reach practically all of their targets. That's how you do it. It's productive capitalism and, of course, a scientific know-how at the same time. The United States has, in many aspects, scientific know-how, but they don't know what productive capitalism is, and everything is ruled by profit, by unlimited greed. That's not the case in Russia and China. This is the major distinction. So,
Pepe,
yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
how close today Russia and Iran are, in your opinion? Because I see in Iran that the tone has totally changed. Those people, with the new government in Iran, you remember everybody was worried about what would happen.
Yes.
The new government may change the policies in Iran toward Russia and toward the West. They thought that they're going to be closer to the West. They're trying to do everything. But it seems that tone is just changing in Iran. And they're, even those people who are not, these people, the new government, it's a combination of the left, right, the middle, it's a combination. But after all, we had Zarif, part of the government, who was fired, who was somehow he decided to to get out of government because of the pressures he was receiving. And we saw that the former president of Iran, Rouhani, and his foreign minister Zarif, which was part of the new administration, the Pezeshkian administration, they were criticized by the head of the parliament in Iran. He said that the way that you're talking about our relationship with Russia, you are not helping us. You have no right to talk that way. They're not in power, even by talking, the way that they were trying to say that we have to get closer to the United States. But it seems that the tone is changing totally in Iran. They want to have a better relationship with Russia and China, and they're on the path of improving it drastically. How do you see the situation in Russia and the combination of the two, Iran and Russia?
Well, I agree with your analysis completely. This intervention at Majlis was, wow, it was a bomb. And everybody in Iran saw it. Nah? It was public.
I have never seen such a thing in Iran happen.
And they it's like telling it like it is. And I'm sure the majority of the Iranian population would agree, because they see the Rouhani Zarif crowd as appeasers, essentially. And there's no way to appease the beast. No, you can't. You have to make the beast think twice if the beast wants to hurt you. And this is what this new, I hope Pezeshkian, finally he got the message. This is how they should act. And obviously the Russians and the Chinese are teaching them a few tricks, right? But I'm very frustrated, Nima. I should be in Iran today.
No.
The conference that I was supposed to go was supposed to be yesterday. So today I would have been in Iran and asking your question over there. So it is frustrating not being able to go. At the same time, I totally understand the fears of everything is in flux. Maybe not a good time to bring foreigners here. The security situation can, nobody knows what could happen. But in terms of security, they are very, very good in Iran. So that's not the thing. What I heard is that this was a clash between factions in the government. I don't know if you agree with that. But the explanation that I had was that the I prefer not to give names. The organization that was in charge of this conference, bringing foreign analysts, they did not clear everything, especially in security terms, with some other very high level organizations, and that's why it was canceled at the last minute.
That could be.
So okay, in fact, I hope that this was just an internal misunderstanding, right? And all of us who follow Iran and go to Iran constantly, and it's good for them to have us over there. And obviously, when we were there the last time, they totally understood that, and they facilitated all possible contacts for us, you know. But yeah, you gave us your analysis, right? Do you have anything to add in terms of why this change of mood? Because maybe public opinion is starting to be starting to consider the Pezeshkian administration as too soft, too lame, and not incisive enough as Raiz's administration.
For
Now,
such a long time,
yeah,
Pepe,
yeah.
for such a long time, these people who I would say the foundation or the main character of this sort of movement is Zarif in Iran.
Yes.
They were trying to convince the leader of Iran that we can communicate with the United States, we can have a better relationship with the United States, we can, and all of these sort of arguments on his part, and he was so powerful in doing that, and he was trying to do everything. But as time went by and we saw the latest attack on Iran, it collapsed everything, because nobody gonna buy these sort of arguments anymore from Zarif or anybody close to Zarif. And that is, we have in Iran, we have the right, we have the people on the left, we have the people. The leader of Iran is not the right or left; he's in the middle.
Exactly.
He's just managing the situation between the two.
Yeah.
But these people, for years, they were trying to convince him, the leader, that there is something with the United States that may convince the United States for a better relationship. But that thing didn't happen. With the attack on Iran, it's all over. It's nothing gonna happen. They know that the future is gonna be with Russia, with China, with the East. Even with Europeans, they don't care anymore about Europeans, because Europeans.
Yeah.
Even Rouhani, he was so much pro, negotiation with the West. He said that if we want to negotiate with the West, why should we negotiate with Europeans? They're nothing. Let's negotiate with the United States. Europe, there is no place for Europe in terms of the foreign policy of Iran. They have come to this conclusion as we talk. And, the United States just forcing each and every government. I think they're going to benefit from this sort of policy of the United States. Iran going to benefit from that. Russia is going to benefit. China, the whole global South, they're going to benefit from what's going on with the United States. But the United States,
they organize themselves, which is it's still the process is still starting. I would say this should be the main focus. Rest of the year, there's not much left. There are 2 months left. But for 2026, this should be the main focus for BRICS, for SCO, for ASEAN, which they were discussing this early this week here, for all these multilateral organizations and these trade blocs and geopolitical blocs. That's it. Because we are all facing the same enemy, the beast out of control. And now it's very, very clear. And there are there are no limits for the beast. The beast is on the prowl. They see, that's an easy prey. Bah, that's another easy prey. Bah, it's extremely dangerous. And the only two who can have a face off or stare down the beast are Russia and China.
I think Russia would be registered in history as one of the because of Russia we have all these changes. I think
And very,
if there
very
wasn't a war in Ukraine, we haven't,
exactly.
it has changed everything. The war in
It
Ukraine has changed
changed
everything.
everything, Anima. You touched the absolute heart of the matter. The strategic defeat by Russia on the whole collective West, this is, for the moment, is the most important thing happening in the 21st century.
Yeah.
This is the real game changer. And everything will be a consequence of this strategic defeat.
Muito obrigado, Pepe.
Obrigado a você. Foi uma ótima conversa. I think today was really, really
Foi
good.
muito
Very
bom.
good.
It was
Thank
so
you.
good. So good.
Always a pleasure. It's good to be in Southeast Asia. You are more relaxed. I am in a Buddhist environment, so
Yeah.
I have time to think. I have time to read. I have time to organize stuff. You go out, the people are wonderful. The food is extraordinary. This is one of the great cities in the world now.
Yeah.
I think one day we should do a podcast just talking about how absolutely cool Bangkok is.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Pepe.
Thank you so much, my friend.
See
Ciao,
you.
ciao. Bye.
Wow.
See you.